This is a bit of a touchy subject, so I'm going to try to be as delicate as I possibly can. But it's such an important issue that we think licensing producers face that I have to make a video on it. And I wanted to share the story of something that just happened in Pro Feedback as hopefully a cautionary tale, if you want to call it, so that you don't find yourself in a position where you're being misled and getting feedback from your family and friends that actually end up hurting you and taking you further away from wherever your goals are in sync licensing. Okay. First off, this is the sensitive part. Feedback from your family and friends, meaning sending your music off to people that you have personal relationships with and saying, hey, what do you think about this? And them getting back to you and saying, oh, that's really cool. That's really awesome. I like this. I like that. Keep going. That's not only important for your sync license career, it's vital. It's like if you don't have that, you're stacking up the odds against yourself too high. I really do think you have to have people in your life that are encouraging you, patting you on the back, saying, keep going, we love it. And that's all they have to really keep saying is just keep doing it. However, the danger sort of pops up when you are looking to those same people for professional feedback, right? So this is the story of something that happened in Pro Feedback, and I wanted to share it with you guys because it just demonstrates why it's so important to put these two types of feedback in two different categories in our lives. One, family and friends that are there for love and support, and this one over here is professional feedback that's for getting you better at your craft, okay? They are two different types of feedback, and I really do think we need to separate them in our sync licensing careers to make sure we are not being misled or deluding ourselves into thinking we're going in the right path when we're really actually not. So here's the story. Just did a live review on the Pro Feedback platform. It was a really great session. The last track of our session was a track submitted by one of the members, and after I listened to it, I realized immediately within 20, 30 seconds, there were big timing issues with it. It was a rock track, really cool energy. I liked where he was going with it. But like at one point in the track, it felt like all of the music skipped, like almost like it was on a CD or something like that. So, it was jamming, and then it had this little half millisecond skip in the music. So I was like, that's a weird thing that happened there. Okay. You listen further on, and then there was other parts of the track where the guitar started rushing ahead of the drums. The bass and the drums weren't even locked in together. It became just a complete free-for-all where everybody was playing, every instrument was playing in its own tempo and its own time signature. And it was just like, whoa, just messy, right? Just an absolute timing mess. So I stopped the track, and my notes for this member was, you know, before we get into the bigger issues with licensability, because there were definitely some issues with his mix and master and, some of the sonic qualities of his instruments. But I said, rather than getting into all those, we've got some fundamentals we really got to cover here. And that is your rhythm, your timing of this track is just really sloppy. It's definitely not on the grid. I can hear that. Parts of it were, and then other parts weren't. So it seems like he kind of had the skill set for parts of the music, but then for some reason, something else happened later on the track where everything just sort of fell off the grid. So I asked him in the chat, I said, are you hearing these timing issues? And his answer was no. So I was a little bit concerned about that, because if you can hear, because a lot of times with the notes I give feedback members, a lot of times the feedback I'll get back from the feedback I give them is that they'll say, Jesse, I didn't hear that until you said it. Now that you said it, it's very clear to me that I did have that issue, whatever the issue was. But for some members, they're not hearing it. And I was like, okay, that could be definitely some kind of an issue. So my guidance to him, and this is the kind of thing that I promise all feedback members, I won't just review your track and say, well, you got some timing issues. Next track, moving on, right? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to leave you hanging in a lurch like that. I always give specific suggestions or ideas, or sometimes I call it homework, for how to improve whatever your issue is. So I told this member, don't worry about anything else in your track. Don't worry about mix mastering, even guitars, transitions, structure. Don't worry about any of that stuff. I said, for the next track you submit to us here on the platform, just put together a drum track and a bass track and make sure that they are on the grid the entire time through. I don't care how long it is. I don't care what you do in your drums and bass. I should be able to click play on your track, and as we go through the entire thing, I shouldn't hear any timing issues. I even told them, I said, in this beginning learning phase, lean more towards quantizing and being robotic, because you really just need to learn this basic skill of making sure that things are following a tempo and staying on grid. Later on, you can start to get a little more fancy, and you can add some human groove to it. You can kind of get a little loose with the quantizing feature of your DAW. But for right now, I almost want it to sound really, really robotic because we really need to make sure that this is working great. Anyways, those are the notes I gave him. We wrapped up the session. The next day, he sent me a note saying, I didn't hear the timing issues you were talking about, and I sent this track to my musician friends, and none of them heard the timing issues either. They all said the track was fine. So I'm sitting here confused. Jesse's telling me I have big timing issues, like massive timing issues. My musician friends are telling me nothing's wrong with the track. What do I do? So this is a predicament, right? So who do you if you can't hear it, right? That's the kind of the big issue. If you can't hear it, and now it's a matter of who do I trust with my track? Really touchy subjects, really hard. So, and I don't want to get in the position of trying to compete to say, well, you should trust me over your friends. Like these are your friends. You have like lifelong, probably relationship with them and your family members. And I'm somebody you found online. All right. But I will make the case though that you can have both. We don't have to be in competition with each other, but you can value each one of these differently. Okay. Because what can happen, I don't remember which one was the family and friends, but let's say this is the family and friends giving us feedback. What can happen with a lot of feedback we get from family and friends is that it can be meant to be love and support. And two things can happen with that, which will prevent us from getting the sort of helpful professional feedback we need. One, our family and friends are probably not sync licensing producers, right? Let's just be honest. They have other jobs, other specialties, other skills. Very talented, highly skillful people, but probably just not in sync licensing. So they might not be able to even to hear what it is that we want to get out of their feedback. So they probably might not be able to hear how you can improve your track. So it's not a fault of their own. They just don't have those ears. They just don't have those skills. Number two, it sometimes is easier to just say, yeah, it sounds great. Let's go get a beer. Let's go move on with our day. Than to say, hey, yeah, you've actually got a lot of problems with this track. There's some things not working. You definitely have some timing issues. You have this and this and this that might need to be looked at. If it's, a buddy of mine and he wants feedback from me, I'm always going to take that into consideration. Like, do you want the honesty or do you want just sort of a pat on the back so that we can kind of maintain this friendship? And maybe I don't know how you're going to take some kind of honest criticism. Everybody's got a different calculation with that. So it's not a bad thing that they're making that calculation, but it's a calculation. So it's very possible that this member sent this track to his buddies and his buddies didn't want to, bring up any sort of a difficult conversation. So they said, yeah, it sounds great, man. Cool. Grooving track. Let's go hang out. Right? I don't know. I'm not going to try to assume that that's what happened, but it definitely does happen with our friends and family. And that's okay because they're trying to maintain the friendship. They want that love and support to continue, right? So that's why having professional feedback can be a different slot in a different category, and you can completely value it in a different way. That's what we do with pro feedback, okay? So when you come to pro feedback, we are still going to be positive. We're still going to be gentle. We're not going to be cruel. We're not going to just needlessly pick your track apart and never try to show you any sort of support. We do try to keep it in a positive frame, of course, but around this frame of positivity and encouragement is, boom, honesty, right to the point, honesty, like a good doctor. That's really how I see ourselves. You're bringing your track to us. We see your track as our patient, okay? Terrible analogy, I know, but it's how we see it. And if your track has some broken bones, we're going to point out where those broken bones are, right? A good doctor would do that. If your track has cancer and it's not looking good and there's a lot of issues going on with it, we're going to tell you you've got a lot of work to do with this track. It's not licensable. It's not ready to be submitted to a library yet. Here's where we feel you have some potential. Here's where you could go with your track. And let's lean into those strengths and let's start to clean up maybe some of the sloppiness or the whatever's going on in your track that's just taking your track away from the licensable world, right? So that's what we really do. And that's how I've trained all of the pros that are on our platform. That's certainly how I give feedback. It's basically coming from the few times I've gotten feedback in my sync career where I got it honestly from somebody I trusted and respected. It's still stung. I'm not going to say it doesn't feel great or that it feels great when you get it. It still sometimes bruises the ego, sometimes feel like a little kick in the gut. But that's a temporary feeling. And especially with the positive sort of encasement that we give our feedback in the platform, we try to soften that as much as we can. But I guarantee you, if you come here with an open mind and you really are here for professional feedback from people who are doing this full time, it might sting a little bit in the beginning. And especially for this member who might be in this, almost crisis of going, whoa, I thought I was on the right track because all my friends and family were telling me I was on the right track. And now Jesse is telling me I have a lot of work to do. That can cause some cognitive dissonance. It can cause some really uncomfortable feelings, right? So when you move forward, though, with our kind of a feedback, and you take that and you sort of are open to the idea that, well, Jesse's been doing this for a while. He's been giving feedback for a while. All these other pros have been doing this a little longer than I have. Maybe I need to listen to what they're saying. And you sort of come here with an open mind. You'll find that that uncomfortable feeling will be something you're grateful for within a couple of weeks. I guarantee you, probably literally maybe a week, maybe two at the most. It's not a long period that you'll feel not so great about it. The sooner you can take those notes and those suggestions that we have and you apply them, submit another track on the platform, get some confirmation from us that like, hey, you're on the right track now. Now you're doing something that's more licensable. You will look back on that initial feeling of uncomfortableness saying, you know what, I needed that. That was like sort of that bitter medicine I had to swallow. Like my ego needed a little kind of punch to get myself out of where I was. I was a little bit unsure. I didn't know, or at least maybe I was certain that I thought I was going the right way. And now I realized, wow, I was not really going in the right direction. Now I feel much more confident because my eyes are open, my ears are open, and now I can hear things that I couldn't hear before. This is the kind of note I get from so many of our members on the platform. They're hearing things in their track and problems with their previous tracks that they'd never heard before. That's a 100% guaranteed sign you are growing as a producer, because you show a new producer a track and you show an established producer who's been doing it for many years a track, they will hear different things that can be adjusted and improved. And that's because of experience and because their ears have been essentially trained. So you can do this yourself, which is what I did myself, essentially, was just keep cranking out music kind of alone in my own home studio for years and years and years, slowly getting better. Or when you join Pro Feedback, you basically are plugging your mind and your ears into, I don't know, 40 or 50 years of experience combined with all the pros that are in the platform. And you can sample all of our feedback. You can get feedback from all of us. You can basically go from one person to the next. And so you can basically get plugged into this much wisdom and jet boost, essentially, and jet speed your improvements in sync licensing from day one on this platform. And so that's what I hope this member is eventually going to see, see this sort of thankful moment of like, it was an uncomfortable experience maybe, and maybe there was a little bit of conflict of friends and family, and keep getting that feedback from your friends. Like, keep getting it, keep asking for support, keep sharing that music. So vital. And separate it. It's not don't do it either or. Keep it and add professional feedback, and know that they are providing two completely separate things in your sync license career. And I think actually both are totally necessary. Pro feedback was created because this is just one part of the industry that just doesn't exist. Send your track to a library. They're not going to give you feedback if they're not going to take your music on. They'll just say, no, thank you, but it's not a good fit for us, or they won't even have the courtesy to respond to you, right? There's a big hole in our industry where there's so many producers submitting music out there, and they just don't know, was it me? Was it them? Big question marks, big anxiety, big uncertainty going on out there. Pro feedback is the answer to all of that big hole. That was the big plug we tried to create to fit into that hole, to say, if you're uncertain, you don't know, you're not really sure if you're getting helpful, honest feedback from your friends and family, because again, they might not know what they're listening to or how to help you out. Pro feedback, excuse me, is here and it is available. So I encourage you guys, come check us out. There's a link below in the description box if you'd like to join us. And comment below if you have any further thoughts, opinions on the subject in terms of what's your experience been like getting feedback from family and friends. Do you see this difference and how important that is? Or do you rely 100% just on sending your music to a buddy of yours and seeing what he thinks about your track? Like, what's your system to ensure you are doing great and getting that love and support as well? I'd love to hear your guys' stories.